Hello and welcome to Sharing Vietnam on NetViet VTC10. As you may know, one of the most interesting topics in Vietnam finance and banking in 2011 is banking restructuring. In order to control the rate of non-performing loans, some banks with low risk management need to be merged or acquired. In order to get more information about this issue, we invited here Mr. Kimura, the country director of ADB in Vietnam. Let's join with us to get more information.
Tomoyuki Kimura is the country director of ADB's in Vietnam residence mission. He assumed office in July 2011. Mr. Kimura is responsible for setting the priorities for ADB's assistance program to Vietnam. He leads the preparation of country strategy and program for Vietnam in coordination with the authorities, development partners, and civil society and non-governmental organizations. He also works closely with the authorities and other stakeholders for improved greater Mekong sub-region cooperation.
Hello, Mr. Kimura, and thank you so much for taking your time and joining Sharing Vietnam today. Mr. Kimura, how long have you been in Vietnam and how do you feel?
I have been here for 7 months. I came here July last year. It's a rapidly growing country, rapidly changing country. I'm very much excited working for Vietnam. I have been in this development business for about 18 years, but this is my first time to work for a Southeast Asian country. Yes.
Could you share with us a little bit about your Tet holiday?
Yeah, it looks like a very, very important and exciting period of the year for everybody. And people are, of course, Vietnamese people are always so active and energetic, but particularly during this time, they look like even more active and energetic. Yes.
So in the future, what will be the plan of ADB to support Vietnam?
Well, that is exactly what we are now working on in the process of preparing our new country partnership strategy. This will be our next medium-term strategy covering the period of 2012 to 2015. Basically, we will support the government, implement their socio-economic development plan, and also help them achieve their vision of becoming a modern industrialized nation by 2020. Our major strategic thrust under our new strategy will be to help the government for economic restructuring, to help the government address the issue of the vulnerable groups, the society, and also response to environmental and climate change issues.
Before moving to the second part of the program, why don't we have a short break?
Against the background of the risk of increasing non-performing loans, 3 banks with poor risk management needed to be merged. That began the restructuring in Vietnam bank system. Let's see what will specialists comment on this event.
Hợp nhất lại để bổ sung cho nhau những cái phần mạnh và hạn chế những cái yếu kém của những ngân hàng để từ đó lành mạnh hơn trong cái hoạt động của mình để bảo vệ quyền lợi của những người gửi tiền cũng như là hệ thống ngân hàng.
Tôi cho rằng là với cái sự mà hợp tác và tham gia hợp tác một cách toàn diện ngay từ đầu của BIDV đối với cái việc hợp nhất 3 ngân hàng này sẽ làm cho cái ngân hàng hợp nhất này từng bước được củng cố mạnh hơn, vững hơn.
Khi mà có cái chủ trương và theo cái sự tự nguyện hợp nhất của 3 ngân hàng này, có chủ trương của ngân hàng nhà nước, thì tôi tin rằng cái việc hợp nhất này nó sẽ tốt lên hơn.
Mr. Kimura, it can be said that one of the most interesting topics in Vietnam's finance and banking in 2011 is banking restructuring. So can you explain with us a little bit about this situation in Vietnam and what are your assessment on these issues?
This banking system issue actually should be looked at in the broad context of the Vietnamese economy. Well, this country has first of all, great potential with a large growing population, very favorable demographics, and also very strategic location. The country actually has shifted from export of primary goods to more labor-intensive manufacturing, and then further to more technology-intensive the manufacturing. And then Vietnam has achieved rapid economic growth while reducing poverty substantially. But this current growth model is being constrained by some structural rigidities, including actually the financial sector or banking sector issue. So this financial banking sector issue is the one of the major structure issues the Vietnam has to address so that it can continue to grow economically and also sustainably.
In recent press conference, the Central Bank of Vietnam implement that M&A can be a good solution for the restructuring the banking system of Vietnam. So what do you think about this?
In fact, the non-performing loan of the banking sector overall has showing some increase. And perhaps if an international standard is applied, the figure might be even higher. And also, if you look at the capital adequacy ratio, which is another major indicator for the soundness of the banking system, we see some issues about some banks. So these problems have to be addressed to safeguard the banking sector in the short term.
Many countries in the world have applied already this solution for restructuring their banking system. So do you think that this solution will be available and will be suitable for Vietnam?
Well, first of all, their capacity in risk management is still weak. They have to have a more sophisticated internal system to manage and control the risk. But of course, on the other hand, the government, State Bank itself, also continue to improve their capacity for supervising the banking industry.
Thank you, Mr. Kimura. And now, before moving to the third part of the program today, we will have another short break.
At the end of 2011, the restructuring agenda was released by the Central Bank of Vietnam. In this agenda, 3 groups of banks that can solve poor liquidity-related problems will be formed in the first quarter of the year 2012. From the second quarter of 2012 to the end of 2003, the restructuring process for banks from the third group would be finished. From 2003-2005, 1 or 2 banks might meet regional standards.
Vietnam already has an agenda for restructuring the banking system. So what do you think about this agenda?
Yeah, so as I just mentioned earlier, first of all, this financial sector restructuring or banking sector restructuring is a very complicated task, and it's a very long-term task, because the government has to look at the many aspects. If you say financial sector, banking sector, there are various issues like money market, capital market, the small and medium enterprise financing, microfinancing, regulation, supervision. So all these relevant aspects of the banking sector, financial sector, have to be examined in a very holistic manner. So that's the difficulty and the challenge of the financial and banking sector restructuring. But I think the government is fully aware of the need, particularly as I mentioned, this inefficient and very shallow and narrow financial sector, banking sector, is one of the major constraints for the Vietnam to continue to grow. So the banking sector restructuring or financial restructuring is also urgently needed for the long-term development of the country.
Mr. Kimura, with the participation of the foreign financial institution in Vietnam, for example, ADB, will support the restructuring banks process of Vietnam.
Well, we were not involved in the restructuring of any individual banks. We have been working with the government of Vietnam for financial sector over almost 15 years. We will continue to support the government basically to develop the good institutional framework in terms of bank supervision or regulations. Particularly, we'll be focusing on the money market and the capital market, and also will continue to be engaged in the microfinance and the SME finance areas.
So in the future, what can we do in order to have a great success in the restructuring the banking system?
Of course, the banking system needs to be safeguarded in the short term. That's the priority for the government. If there are some banks with a weak portfolio, those banks must have been, say, in some cases, maybe merged with a stronger one, or there may be a need for the consolidation of the banks. But at the same time, the government has to further strengthen its supervisory and regulatory capacity. And also, bank itself have to enhance their risk management capacity. So this capacity development, human resource development in the sector is the one major challenge. And then also the various policies, for example, this non-performing loan provisioning, capital adequacy ratio. I think the country's policy has to be enhanced up to the international standard. But the one constraint when the government tackle these issues is a lack of information. I think government needs to carry out a comprehensive assessment of the sector as a whole and measure the magnitude of the risk, and then identify where the immediate the problems are. And also perhaps as a new member of a middle-income country group, government should be able to learn from experience of other countries, particularly other middle-income countries in the regions.
Once again, thank you so much for taking your time and joining Sharing Vietnam today. We wish you and your family a great success in 2012.